Today's guest is a TV producer, paranormal investigator, and numerology expert. He's also a published author and a contributing writer for several magazines, including the Johns Hopkins Medical Journal. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Peter Anthony. Hi Peter, and welcome to KoitCast.
Thank you. Thank you
very
much.
No worries. It's great to have you here. So I appreciate you giving up your time for this interview. I suppose the old classic question, who are you, where are you from, all that good stuff.
Well, my name is Peter Anthony. My background has been in television and film for the last 30-something odd years. I believe my begin career started with CBS in the news division. And at the time, I was studying to become a special effects makeup artist. Ooh. And so that was my dream, that was my goal. And then along the way, I had a near-death experience. So everything I had, envisioned to be a part of my career, my success, was all related to the news division at that time, hopefully going into television and film, into special effects. And as I said, that just unfortunately did not take place. Okay. Where I'm from Dallas, Texas. I wasn't born, I was born in New York, but raised in Texas after parents divorced, and left New York City and ended up in Dallas, and two completely opposite regions of the country. So it was quite a shock for me, but I think it kind of served its purpose, because it allowed me to, when I did travel quite a bit, to see different parts of the United States and their various beliefs, etc. So it opened me up to being accepting and open to all kinds of people and their personalities.
Exactly. It gives you a wider view of the people around you, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Now, before we delve directly into the meat and veg, i.e. your NDE experience, I think I want to know about your potential route into makeup, for the FX industry. So how far did you get with it?
Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, I had gone to school, learning video, makeup. I had an art scholarship when I was in school. I actually was an amazing artist. I could paint, sculpt, build, watercolor, tempera, chalk, pastels, you name it, I could do it. And it was just a natural gift that I came into this life with. And I must say, looking back at it, I kind of took it for granted, because it just flowed out of my hands, and I had a great perception of color, shadow, light, etc. And so that was just a given for me to go into this. And of course, back in the late 80s, for me, for so many of us who are young, looking at all the movies like Alien and Terminator, Star Wars, all those creatures, all those monsters, I was just right up my alley. And so I was destined in my world at that time, that's where I was going. And in order for me to get into the union, I took a job in the news division and convinced myself that, at that time, if you just got into the union and be referred by, when you're going into special effects school, I believe at that time it was in Toronto, you needed a referral. And so CBS was my ticket into that referral. And so it gave me the chance as a makeup artist and stylist to work with some very high profile people. I mean, I've worked with presidents, first ladies, politicians, which opened the door for me working with, once I got cleared through the FBI, that it also allowed me to get, to work with other celebrities. So as I said, it was something, did I want to do it? Absolutely not. But my end goal, the finish line for me was getting the film business and going to school.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. For some reason, in my head, as you were saying, I thought you were going to say you had links with the Jim Henson Company, and getting in that way.
No. I mean, back then, as I said, the Terminator franchise and Alien, I mean, that's where you're going. The movies Leviathan, Terminator, I'm trying to remember what else was out at the time, Star Wars. There were so many different
all the good ones at that time. Yeah.
And as I said, for me, it was just, like I said, I used to sketch and draw monsters, aliens, abstract paint. I mean, you name it. I was just so passionate about it. It's kind of funny because I have no artistic ability to this day after my near-death experience. So the gift that I had, which I took for granted, I can't draw a stick figure.
Now that's like me almost today. I can barely draw myself. So I know that one. Here's a quick question then, and I imagine we're going to get to this during the conversation about the near-death experience, but where do you think that skill of that art came from?
Previous lifetimes. I looking back at it, and I'll take a step further back before going into into the, I guess, the dramas of my near-death experience. I didn't really believe much in anything. I was rather agnostic. I lost my family at an early age. Born raised Catholic. I really, after losing an entire family to a tragic event, my whole perception of God and heaven and all that, my Catholic upbringing, just went out the door. And so what I did, I went to this whole area called not believing in anything, because how could a
Mm.
God who's so loving and compassionate towards man take away my family? So I think for me, looking back at that, there was no understanding of past lives. There was no understanding of any of this stuff that we're about to go into. Me, it was about career, money, success, and so that's what I was driven by. So I think for me that when I go back and look at this gift, not only as an artist, but also as a writer, when I was on the other side, I saw my past lives. Again, looking back at it, when you have a near-death experience, it takes 7 years to process. And I think for me, there was no discussion of near death. We didn't talk about it back then in the late 80s and 90s. It was something that was kind of whispered. And, I think it was just someone mentioned to me, did you die and come back? And it was kind of, hush hush. So going back to your original question, I know for a fact, looking back at all my life review, that there was a waste of time in previous lifetimes, that I didn't take care of that gift and utilize it correctly. And I think also the other thing I saw on the other side, in part of my cycle, was I was an alcoholic in one of my lifetimes, and I think the bottle and my drinking and all that kind of stopped that creative flow, and I just took it for granted. So I think as I've come to understand, when you come back into this lifetime, it's not this whole karma thing, payback, as much as it affords you an opportunity, what you didn't complete in one lifetime affords you an opportunity to do in your next lifetime or the next lifetime. So
Yeah.
that answers hopefully your question.
Okay, and I think we'll expand on that as part of the whole
Sure, sure,
NDE
sure.
story because I know they're intertwined. So let's dive straight in then. Can you tell us the story of your NDE? And obviously, you don't have to tell us the story of the trauma if you don't like to, but if you're open to it, go for it.
Oh, I've done this for so many years. We were wrapping up on a party at CVS, and it was on my birthday, and um, I had let a simple diagnosis get out of hand. So back in the late 80s, I was diagnosed with a stomach ulcer, and my misdiagnosed, I should say. And so my doctor gave me Tagamet, which was basically to kind of, help the ulcer in the stomach. And when you're working as much as I was at the time and traveling around the country, and this celebrity needed that, and you had an event over here, you had an award ceremony. I mean, I was constantly back and forth with various time zones, and I was just stressed out.
Mm.
And so when I went into my doctor and I was sort of losing weight, so busy. I'm to this day, I'm not a big, I'm not a big person and go into the doctor and sit there and wail about my woes and illnesses. I just didn't take care of myself. And at the time too, and I don't know how much you know about our industry, you just don't get sick. You kind of pop a pill and, the show
Mm.
must go on. And that's how I looked at life at that time. But anyway, back to that. So I was misdiagnosed. I was taking Tagamet. I began to lose a lot of weight from June 4th. That was like in the late 80s. And then by the time I got into August and September, I think I was weighing in the beginning at 165, worked out, did martial arts. I was coming in, I believe, at 120. And I began to see this drastic weight loss. And again, during the AIDS epidemic, when this was taking place, I was stuffing my suits with newspaper, Kleenex, putting makeup on because I had these little lesions on my face and neck. And, there was a whole news media hype about the AIDS epidemic, and everyone was afraid. We didn't know how AIDS was being spread, and there were so many in my industry that were dying. And so
Mm.
I, in my own mind, my paranoia, I thought, oh, I've got AIDS. I can't tell anybody I have AIDS. And I was so worried. And so I let something that was at the time get ahead of me, and by not taking care of it because I was so afraid to go to the doctor, thinking that's what had happened to me, and especially losing friends at that time. And so I let something, as I said, my fear take over. And then we were having a wrap party on my birthday in November the 11th, and or pre-early birthday party. And I was blowing out my birthday cake. And I remember by doing so, I felt this pain in my lower left side of my abdomen, and right through I guess the lower part going down into the groin area. And it was just very difficult. It was just this sharp pain that kept pounding and pounding and pounding. I excused myself. I went to the bathroom and I passed out. And I got up, excuse me, and I was bleeding all over my suit. And so I excused myself, went home, and I think, oh, this is just maybe something I ate. You kind of, in your own mind, you try to diagnose yourself of what's going on. And I got to my door and passed out again. My neighbor found me, and I was rushed to the hospital. And thus the drama began. And I remember being checked in. The ambulance, the sirens, the red, blue flashing, looking out the window, not knowing what's happening. I could see the faces of the paramedics, and I could see there was fear, worry on their face. I'm bleeding. I got to the admitting area, and they just assumed I had AIDS because you could see I had these little brown spots on my face. I had, I was bleeding, obviously, and I was coughing. And
Right.
again, at that time, everyone just assumed that's what you had was AIDS.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
have
I
AIDS.
understand.
And so anyway, they refused to check me in.
Oh, crikey.
And so my neighbor that found me, God bless his soul, obviously got himself into a situation that was just certainly not his plan for the evening. But he went to bat for me, and said, you need to check this guy. And here I am, not feeling well, horrible pain going through my abdomen, and just I knew at that time that something was taking place. Anyway, fast forward to the punch. The admitting clerk checked me in. A guy, I don't know how old this young man was, probably an intern, suited up like I was radioactive, put on a gurney, bleeding all over myself. I remember him, pushing my gurney with me on top of it, and I'm touching my left side, and he's looking down, and all I could see were his eyes and perspiration on his brow. And I knew I could see the fear in his eyes. And I asked him, as I reached up, am I okay? And he kind of freaked out and just put me in a corner and left me there. So I was left by an exit door, and I don't know how long I was okay. So it had to be an hour or so. It was an exit door to the parking garage, and a nurse found me and wanted to know what I was doing there. She approached me, and she looked at me, and I mean, again, the wide eye expression of, oh my God. And I convinced her to take me to the ER, and begrudgingly she did. Getting there was act 2 of this drama. She rolled me into a gurney. It was room 11. I could hear her talking to the anesthesiologist and some of the ER nurses, and I remember this so vividly. Nurse Sullivan, what have you done? You have exposed us to the AIDS virus. And that's when I realized at that time what they were thinking. So there was this conversation going back between amongst one another about what they were going to do with me. Anyway, Sullivan came in. I remember where she came in, she said, we are nurses and doctors, and we have a responsibility here. I have no idea what happened because I'm in and out of consciousness. She comes in. She took my clothes off. She said, "I'll be right back." She came in with a robe. Said, "Flip over." She, washed my body from the blood through the clothes down on the ground and brought a mop in and started, mopping the floor. Looking back at that moment, Kato, she was my savior. This woman was my savior. If it hadn't been for her bravery, and again, going back to that period of time where consciousness was, we didn't know. And here I'm coughing and I'm bleeding and I'm on the gurney and, within, millimeters away from this woman's face. And we didn't know if it was spread by blood, by air. No one knew. It was airborne. No one knew. And so I go back to that moment in my life, and she went beyond the call of duty, took me on this gurney, rolled me to the OR, and she went to some nurse who was speaking. I'm in and out of consciousness again, knowing that whatever's going on is unacceptable. And this is something, too, I remember going back into past lives, or you even want to call it angels or advanced beings. I remember I was watching her. I'm on this gurney, again, still bleeding. And there was this African-American woman, very frail looking, but ageless. I couldn't tell how old she was, but she had these most piercing blue eyes, just piercing. And she was on a gurney, and she reached over to my hand and she said to me, "Don't be afraid to go into the light." And I remember that because to this day, I go back to that moment in my life, that disaster, that horrible event. And I remember when she touched my hand, I just felt this. I don't know that it was a sense of peace. I guess trust. And I remember I went into the OR again, floating back and forth. I remember I got into the OR. I remember hitting the operating table, and I remember how cold it was. And I remember the anesthesiologist, they could not. I had lost so much, weight throughout the summer, obviously losing blood throughout the summer, because I didn't know at the time I had Crohn's disease and also tuberculosis, and didn't know even at the time I had a perforated viscus. So here I am on this operating table, and I'm floating in and out of consciousness. And I remember he said to me, "Turn over. This is going to hurt." I couldn't tell you what happened. I just remember that it was 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom.
Gone.
So,
yeah.
So long-winded experience. So that's the first part of that experience of what happened to me that night. Shall I continue, or do you want to ask another question?
I will interject here with one clear thing, and I'm sure you've been told this many times. I mean, even without a potential for the next chapter, which is the NDE part, that is one hell of a story anyway, isn't it? The story of being left alone and basically your trauma of not being trusted as a patient. What a story that tells.
For me, this is very important, and I say this to your listening audience. It was the first time in my life that I was social profiled. At the hospital, assuming that I had AIDS. At the hospital, assuming that I was gay. I had changed clothes. My neighbor, when we brought me in, got me out of my suit and tie, and I had a box of clothes going to Goodwill. And so David put me in these clothes. And so when I went in, they just assumed I was homeless because I didn't have my wallet. I didn't have my insurance card. I had none of that. So as I said, that whole social profiling for me was one of the first lessons I learned consciously. And so that was a trauma. Absolutely. To this day, I look back at that, and anytime I see someone on the street that's being hurt because of their color, their race, their sexual preferences, I step in. It's very important because I think firsthand I know what it's like to have that pointed in your face. So yes, it was very traumatic for me.
I'm going to ask a difficult question now, and this is
Sure.
not meant to pick you out or attack in any way, shape or form. This is just about understanding. Now, that experience there of what you went through, which showed you the social profiling, were you prior, would you have quickly judged people yourself, do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Without a doubt. I think that we all, until we experience the falling down that many of us who have been social profiled, you are changed. And I'm not saying that I was a bigot, but I think for me, we all have judgments. And
Hmm.
so when we get into the tunnel, I'm going to talk about judgment. And yes, I had judgment. Yes, I had opinions. I worked in the news division. I could tell when going to the green room who was true and who wasn't. We had these politicians who were, great on camera, and what I heard in the green room was completely different. So yes, there was judgment attached to that.
Yeah, yeah, I can
Or
understand that. I,
nowadays, I call it a strong observation.
yes, yes. I think there's a lot to be said for being a good judge of character and seeing
Mm-hmm.
people for what they see. But I just think that, and I know we're going to get into this again, but I just think that almost every experience we go through, you go through it for a reason to get to a particular point when
Oh,
that becomes
absolutely.
completely clear and then you understand. A search for understanding, if you will. So it's nice to see that backed up here in
Well, it
your
was a hard
story.
learning curve, not only for me, but having traveled all around the world, and you have people coming up to you, and you know different parts of my near-death experience. Whether it's the beginning stages, the middle stages, the end stages. Obviously the after effects of the near death and what you do with it. Everyone has an opinion and has a story, and everyone's affected by something differently. But for some reason, that whole judgment part, which we'll go into, was something that I think people really resonated with.
Hmm. Okay, cool. One final thing before we move on to the next part, then.
Sure.
The lady on the other gurney that held your hand, does she come back into this story later on?
Yeah.
If not, well, then I'll cool. Then I'll ask you a question about her, which is to say, was she put there for you? Do you believe?
Oh, when you've had a near-death experience and you process and you try to dissect and you review and you go back to, and everyone has an opinion, I go back to that moment. Me, I have no proof, none whatsoever. But having done so much research on near death and past lives and angels and those enlightened beings that come to us, in my opinion, again, no proof, I know she was some sort of angel. And the reason why I say that is because her eyes, she was an African American, but her eyes were this penetrating blue, and time just stopped. There was this pause, as though we're, shooting in film slow mo, and you kind of experience that. And I just remember there was such an impact. And when she touched my hand, I felt, and I'm not saying there was just this electrical current, but I felt something.
Hmm.
And her eyes were just so compassionate. Whether she was, going into another operating room and she realized that she was on, who knows what it was. Me, I guess, looking back at that moment, I mean, whether she was an earth angel or she really was an enlightened being or an angel, it had purpose for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the overall answer, isn't it? Is the purpose is there, just irrespective
Mm-hmm.
of where it comes from. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've had that thing you said about the time slowing down. I can understand that one completely because I've had that happen to me once in my life when I had a car crash. My car was spinning around and I thought, this is weird. You instantly go into a different sort of like experience of time. It's so weird. So,
Yeah, it's a time dimensional pause, and
mm,
and I've had those happen. Well, especially more so after the near death experience, and I explained that into my second book about these pause moments that happen during critical moments of life ending situations, or the potential of life ending situations.
mm, amazing.
Can I ask
Okay,
you something?
of course you may.
What
Yes,
when it slowed down? What do you remember? I mean, were you flipping? Were you turning? Was it just, did everything just move at a slow pace?
it was my car was turning on its wheels on the road, so it wasn't flipping. It was just going round. Um, and I was thinking at the time, there's that bloke. I can see the bloke. Oh, look, I'm spinning. This is weird. You're hyper aware almost, and you capture almost every second and everything. But I just remember being in it and thinking, this is this, and this is weird. And then all of a sudden, boom, and then you're back out into normal time.
Yeah, you go back into normal time space. Yeah, I'm yes.
Yeah, it was odd, but I don't regret it for a moment, and I'm glad it happened, which I think is a
Mm.
theme that will come up a lot, and potentially with yourself, maybe or not. So let's move into part two then. So you carry on the story.
So here I am on the operating table. Um, Doctors, nurses going into medical protocol. Um, I'm me, Peter Anthony. I can see me in, I guess, spirit form, ethereal form, transparent form, looking down at Peter Anthony in physical form in slow motion, watching doctors and nurses go to medical protocol because at this time, I mean, as is going back to how long it was in the hallway, how long it took to get from the ER cubicle room 11 to OR, it was a lot. It was a lot of time. So as I said, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. I'm looking down at Peter Anthony, and as I'm floating above, looking down at my body, I could hear their thoughts, and I could feel the panic, the concern, the hurriedness, and their thoughts. I could hear them, hurry now. I remember when they, put the shock paddles to my chest, me looking down at Peter. I remember that again in slow motion. And then I guess over here in the far, I guess my corner over here, I began to see this, what I call the bullseye, the rotating tunnel. And interesting enough, and this is something too I still do not know about, and in all my research, it doesn't make sense. So hopefully soon I'll find out as I go into my next book. But I felt something attached to my solar plexus, as though there was this cord right here going towards this spinning tunnel. And I could feel, me, I guess, somehow another spirit form, physical form, as it was doing this, and me being pulled towards that tunnel. And I remember that, just this pull, the sensation, as I'm going, I guess, towards the tunnel. And as I'm watching this spin, again, doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, all in medical protocol, and looking down at what's going on, I began to see people that I recognized, greeting me at this spinning bullseye. And it was, I talk about this. I mean, people that I had passed, relatives. I remember, and I'm sure you've watched one of my interviews, I talk about my third grade teacher, Mrs. Bellamy. And I was able to recognize Mrs. Bellamy as this youthful, vivacious, very gregarious woman versus the woman I had in my third grade elementary years, and frumpy and distraught and just not negative, just as though life had just sucked life out of her. Not the person, but I recognized her. And then as I'm watching this and identifying people that I knew that had, and I say past because part of what happened earlier in my life, I lost my family, as I mentioned. So there is my sister, there is my my grandparents, there's all this family that I'm recognizing. And interesting, and this is very important for many of us who have this near-death experience. You don't go into this, and this is what people ask oftentimes in my lectures. Well, what were you thinking? Was like, oh, that's your family. You don't do that. You don't process. You don't analyze. You don't judge. You don't question. You allow. Very important what I say, that you allow. You just allow whatever's taking place in your life with no judgment, no anything. You kind of go into this tunnel. At least I did, trusting, allowing. And I remember seeing people from my past lifetimes, and this is where I go back into my whole knowledge of, or I mean, my I should say, yeah, I'll say my knowledge, my wisdom on past lives as a numerologist. Part of that is about learning about past life theories. But I remember seeing people from my past lives, and the reason why I say that, because the way they were dressed from different periods of life, and it's not like they were in costume, but I remember identified and seeing people that I loved, just love so dearly, and identifying with them. And there was this kind of, again, welcome. So you had first level entry into tunnel with those you remember in this particular lifetime, And the next level entry was those people from previous lifetimes. And again, just looking at each person, connecting to that lifetime and what happened, and identifying with that person, and realizing how much that person loved you in that last lifetime. And then I enter into this tunnel, and as it's spinning, and as I'm going through, again, Peter Anthony, I want to say this to your viewing audience: you're not in physical form. You're in spirit form. You're in fragmented form. You're energy matter. You're going through this spinning tunnel, and I remember seeing the colors rotating around me, the sound, the colors that you hear, the feelings of and this is kind of overkill because you hear so many people talk about this sense of peace in the tunnel, but I have no other way to describe it other than this, sense of peace that you're experiencing. And as I'm watching all this, I'm witnessing all these mathematical codes. I've talked about these codes for such a long time: 222, 333, 444, 999, 777, quantum physics, triple codes, quads, all spinning before me, along with the colors and the sound, even if you want to say the ethereal music that I heard, nothing that I can relate to this day. I guess that 8Z frequency, if you want to go to the Hertz frequency, that's what I was kind of experiencing again today, looking back at that moment, and this sense of overwhelming peace. So the first thing I learned as I'm watching all this and seeing different lifetimes before me, when you're on the other side, there is no judgment. There is no gay, there is no black, there is no Christian, there is no Muslim, there is no wealthy, there is no poor. There is the essence of spirit. And you recognize that and you identify with that. You don't judge it. You don't look at that. You just accept it and allow that part of your consciousness to come on. You also, as you're going through this, or at least I did, my tunnel experience was, and this is going to sound pretty wild, but maybe someone in your listening audience will understand this. I was able to understand the collective intelligence. That when we sleep at nighttime, when we go into that REM cycle from whatever time you go to bed until we wake up, there are various time dips that alpha, beta, theta, delta consciousness that we go into when we physically leave our bodies. And here I am seeing all this and feeling it, realizing that how we start our day and how we end our day is collective negativity throughout the day. We have a fight with our boss. We're in the middle of a divorce. We're being fired. Whatever how you identify with what's going on in your life, and you bring that with you. So I'm seeing all these thoughts take place in the shoulda, coulda, woulda, what I should have done, didn't do, could have done, be a part of this experience of just understanding. And I go back into something else as I'm spinning through this tunnel and understanding that the collective intelligence is a part of when you're at a state of peace. When we go into meditation, when we're in trance, we bring in the Akashic records. We bring in the collective intelligence. Einstein talks about it, Tesla talks about it. And that's what I was experiencing. So for me, that moment was incredible. The other part of this was that when we talk about the collective intelligence, it's almost as though what happened to me was in a manner from 0 to 60. Not only did I download the Bible and the Quran and all the history books, everything that took place on the planet, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, again 0 to 60. You are digesting so much knowledge, and you have this divine understanding of how things work. And every moment, every part of our history, every movement, everything that we do or we don't do is all interconnected. The other thing that I learned on the other side, spinning through this tunnel, is that every animal, every plant, every tree, every rock, every wave, every particle, we're all connected as carbon matter. So there is this part of us as we're going into the other side that everything on this planet, be it great or great small, is all interconnected. And I'm accepting this and allowing this to be, I guess, downloaded into my consciousness.
When you rose up and were above your body, two things that struck me here, and it's always two questions with me, you'll find that out. First one, how did you see? Was it just like you were looking through human eyes, or did you see 360?
360, absolutely.
Mm.
There was, again, the eye of a camera, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, me from here above looking down, and the entire room. So 360.
Cool. Yeah, I expected that because that's what I tend to hear from other people as well, and on other interviews I've heard on the radios and other shows. You know, it's a similar sort of thing. And the second question will be, when you saw yourself, or when you saw Peter on that gurney, did you care?
Did I care about Peter Anthony?
Yes.
Looking down at Peter Anthony?
Yes.
Um, Good question. I don't know that it was a moment of care as much as it was a moment of awe. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, because it was like, oh, whoa, that's me, but not me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, and again, you're going from, you know, ethereal plane, physical plane, you have a dimensional rotating tunnel. So again, going back to 360, so many parts of this equation are taking place as you're going through. And as I said, there was no question on, you know, what's going on here and why is that doctor doing that? And how come I'm seeing people over here? Your mind doesn't go to logic. Your mind goes into, it's almost like when you're meditating, you accept, you go into that trance, you go into that state and allow. That's the only way I can identify it with people who've not had near-death experiences. So hopefully that does answer your question.
Yeah, I believe it does. And I think the only phrase, human phrase, I can put it into is, it is what it is, you know, and you just go with the flow, and that's just what's happening at that
Right.
point. To add an addendum on then, when you started being pulled into the spinning light source, did you at that point think, oh, I don't know, I can't go there because there's me over there, I got to get back in? Or did you, again,
Not even.
just, no?
Not even. Not again. Choice to go was part of, you know, again, going back, it's almost as though someone said, hey, that's just, you know, take a roller coaster ride and let's just go enjoy the ride. You just, oh, okay. There was no, you know, sure, I trust the process of what's going on. I didn't doubt, I didn't question, I didn't judge, I didn't do anything. I felt.
Did it feel right then?
Yeah, I accepted. I just, you know, again, that whole trust just allowed the process to take me on to whatever I was going to go through. Looking back at it, it's a lot of information, you know. And I say this because when you come back from the near-death experience and you go back into the real world and you're hearing so many experts deny what happened to you, you know what happened to you because your truth doesn't go away. Your heart, your visual information that you experience on the side, that doesn't go away, though someone else's opinion, you know, doesn't agree with what you're going through. So I no logical explanation for it other than I just accepted and went and allowed freely.
Cool. Yeah, I understand. So let's think about this tunnel again. So obviously you're seeing dead relatives, and then by extension relatives from other lives and friends and God knows what else. That's amazing in and of itself, and it's widely reported, isn't it, that we're welcomed into the afterlife by people we know. The codes thing stands out as something relatively unusual. So obviously you're going to get to the numerology side of things, but should we hold that part back or dive directly into that now?
And many of your audience, and I'm sure who are seeing these codes all around the world. Years ago when I started talking about these codes back in the 90s, there were no numerology codes that define 222 or 333. That wasn't a part of consciousness back then. The only thing that did take place was 1111.
Yes, because that's happened to me.
Yeah, that's all that was going on, and collective consciousness wasn't prepared for what was coming. And so, as I said, so we'll talk about that, but the codes for me at the time made no sense. Me coming back into the real world and being focused on numerology, I began to do the basic understanding and lessons of numerology 1 through 9. Being in the entertainment industry, I was, you know, on the side doing readings, just trying to figure out, does anyone else have these 222s or 11s or 1212s or any other numerology code that I was seeing on the other side, and no one was I wasn't seeing that. And so the further I studied numerology, then I guess it wasn't until Dusty Bunker came along and introduced the codes back in the late '90s, and then I thought, "Woo!" I found part of the first phase of the equation. So the numerology codes for me, we can discuss later on.
Yeah, I think we should. But first off,
Okay.
I definitely need to say about that name that you just mentioned. I've never heard of Dusty Bunker before, but I do love the name. I think it's amazing. Dusty Bunker. Cool. Let's come back to that. So you're in the tunnel. Where do you go then, or what? Carry on the story.
Well, and again, I want to go back to something here because as you're
Okay.
spinning through this tunnel and you're experiencing codes and past lives, no judgment. As I said to you earlier, there is no gay, black, straight, white, Muslim, wealthy, poor. There's advanced consciousness. There's ethereal beings going on, and I think for me, that was pivotal, especially coming back, because I think we spend so much time. We don't even realize we're doing it. Someone can walk in and we look at them and go, oh, we just have that, and just our thought. Why am I here? Oh, look at that. We do that. We don't realize we're doing it, but we're doing it. But I said, for me, on a very grand level, judgment became a part of my new life. And as I said, I'm to this day, I don't like people to. I just don't like people being put down. It's just something that it's a big boundary with me. And something else too that was taking place before I go into my life review that I didn't touch upon. And it's very important to me to this day. Our environment. I was able to look down and see what we as a collective consciousness were doing to our environment. I began to see that we as a collective conscious mankind, and I mentioned this before, we have a lot of anger and judgment, hate, opinions of certain things on this planet. And so going back to what I said about consciousness, everything being connected, water, animal, plant, sky, tree, whatever, what little action I do to someone, a dog, cat, person, has a ripple effect throughout consciousness. And so that was a big reality check for me, seeing the massacring of dolphin and seeing the cruelty, put upon dogs and cats and horses, donkeys, polar bear. I mean, it was an eye-opening part of my awareness to the planet. And I think coming back for me, call it what you will. I live in California. You can say what you want, the tree hugger, whatever you want to call it. But I am very tuned in to nature because I believe in my world, that's where the cathedrals of consciousness are, the trees and the mountains and the ocean. For those who have encounters with angels, you'll learn that at dawn or at sunset, angels come to the shore, they come to the mountains. So, so I began that journey of traveling all around the planet for many years, going to what I call ley lines, and doing grid work. But anyway, that was because of what I experienced on the other side, seeing the cruelty put upon not only our animal kingdom, but women and children, war. So those things became a big part of my journey back. And I have gotten so much criticism from people saying that's, spiritual identity politics. I wrote about this before this was even a part of our consciousness I wrote this book back in the '90s. So as I said, there was no triple codes. There was nothing other than 1111. And we certainly weren't talking about feminism the way we are today. So as I said, for me, I think it took, many, many years for consciousness to catch up with so many of us who've had near-death experiences. And I think we come back as ambassadors of truth and sharing information, whether you like it or not. That's my experience. Everyone has a different experience, but that was my experience, and I did my very best to try to understand. My life
Yeah.
review. Moving on,
Hmm.
unless you have another question, so I don't want to take over your.
Well, no, I sort of have a comment really, which is to back up what you said about nature. Years ago, I went through an anxiety period in my life. Yeah, probably 6 months, which I got through, but it lasted with me for about 3 years, right? And what got me out of that is walking out in nature. It's the healing part of nature. That's where humanity is calm, relaxed, and brings about a moral and ethical good, I think. So I think that's an important point to get across, is that nature, if we get back to nature, I know it sounds all hippy dippy and woo woo, but it's
Oh,
not. It's
no,
the
no, no, no,
reality of
no.
our planet. That's all I think.
Well, for me, as I said, the forests are the cathedrals. You
Mm.
know, the birds, flying midair from tree to tree, chirping secret codes to their fellow travelers in the sky. So yeah, I when I go into nature, it's just me listening to the running brook, to the birds chirping, to the trees blowing in the wind. It's healing for me.
Oh
So
yeah,
as I
me
said,
too,
and I
100%.
appreciate it too because I mean, if you really look at where we are in terms of our environment, we just keep destroying, 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 and we are reaping the results of this, unfortunately. So as I said,
Mm.
for me, while they're here, I want to experience, the great forest and the mountains and the ocean.
Another important point I must touch on is that the phrase you mentioned, which is um, spiritual identity politics, right? We know that's crap, and we know that's crap because nature and the healing power of it was all around at the dawn of time, and it was before politics even existed.
Absolutely.
So it can't be any of that. All there is a moral and ethical good innate in each of us, and we choose to follow it or we don't. And if we do follow the good path, so to speak, you'll have a good life. And I just think it's
Well,
that
I kind
simple.
of look at, and so many of us who've had our near-earth experiences, each one comes back with a piece to the puzzle. Looking back at it and writing about it and going on lectures, it's been it's almost as though what I experienced back then is now becoming a part of where we are in terms of consciousness, the codes, where we are with weather patterns, where we are as a warring nations. All these things are important. It's not that I'm the speaker of politics or the speaker of our environment. I am the speaker of what I was aware to, and what I saw on the other side. And I tell many people when I do my lectures, I mean, I'm like garlic, you either like me or you don't. This is my message. This is what happened to me. And and I don't mean to sound so crass, but I get so many negative emails every day all around the world about certain things. And I just it's one of those. I'm in this phase of my life right now. Go listen to someone else. But this is for me is a very important message because I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate because I went through many years of being denied, what happened to me by the doctors, by the priest, by the rabbi. Um, it wasn't until I had a lady who come to me while I was at a salon getting my hair cut, and she was at the shampoo bowl, and she turned to me and she said, "You died, didn't you? Came back." And
Whoa.
I was like, "How does she know?" um, that freaked me out. But then I began to realize as I started my journey through this near-death experience, many of us recognize one another. Like energy finds like energy.
Oh, I want
So
to
she saw
touch on
something, and
that.
that,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so I think any other questions before we go further on to the
No,
life
let's
review?
go further on because I just wanted to touch on those few
Sure,
points
sure,
that you
sure.
made, and if we can park that one though, because I think that's amazing. So where NDE people recognize each other, I've not heard of that before, so I like that one. Cool, I've written that down. Cool, on you go.
Life review,
Yes.
and again, many of us have life review, some do not. It depends on what stage, what phase you are in terms of the life review or the going through the spinning tunnel. I had a life review. Boy, did I have a life review.
Oh, can I
Um,
just, sorry, quickly stop you?
sure.
Are you having all this while still in the spinning tunnel, or do you go through the spinning
No,
tunnel and
it's
end up
almost
in a location?
it's almost like we're on an elevator, right?
Okay.
And we're now on the first, second, third floor, and now we're going to the main floor. And that sounds silly, but that's kind of how it explained it to a logical world. But that's kind of like it was. I went phase one, phase two, and then the life reviews, the next phase of what I went through. For me, and it was immediate. It's almost as though, uh, and how it's almost like a good editor. As I'm spinning through the tunnel, the next thing you know, and again, very strange. I ended up in a tree. This it wasn't. Sorry, it
It's all right.
wasn't until the Game of Thrones when I saw Jon Snow and his family there at that tree. But
Yeah.
that's kind of I remember watching that. I was like, oh my god, that for me was it gave me shivers down my body. But I remember I was in this tree similar to that. I learned later on with one of my near-death experiences that was called the tree of life. I didn't know at the time, but my review of my life, again, 0 to 60, very important here. 0 to 60. There is no time. It's just that, I say 0 to 60 because it was just flashing before. And if you've seen The Matrix, you've seen Contact, you've seen all these different movies where we are in terms of our life review spinning. It's like it's like a Diet Coke commercial. It's slice of life, slice of life, going. Seeing myself born, seeing myself as 2 years old, riding my bicycle. I mean, every little moment as a child. I even saw a moment of me, when I went to the doctor and having suffered asthma as a young child. And I remember waiting in the office and saw this little army man, and I like that. I took the little army man. You're seeing all these different things that you did as a child, as an adult. Again, no judgment. You're not looking at yourself in your life review going, you should have done that, Peter. Why did you do that? Oh, bad person. You're not doing that as much as you are coming into a higher level of consciousness. You're coming into a higher understanding of consciousness. You're coming into a higher perspective of consciousness. Like, you didn't shine at that moment in life when you were there. And so you kind of get this ping, that it's an awareness of maybe I should not have done that. No judgment, any of that attached. I think part of what also happened to me, seeing my life as an adult, seeing losing my family, what it did to me in my heart area, my heart chakra shutting down, how I was mad at God, blaming. I saw that moment. I saw a lot of that. I remember, truth be known here, I didn't want the job at CBS. In fact, I turned it down many times. But one of the associate producers said, you realize if you take this job with us, it opens up many doors. So I took the job for an opportunity for someone else, for somewhere else. So I saw that moment of my consciousness not shining. No judgment attached to it. It's like, being aware. But I also saw myself, and I talk about this, and I go back to the environment. My final job interview at CBS, I'm crossing a bridge, and I'm listening to loud music, and I have chewing gum, and I'm taking the wrapper and I'm flipping it off the bridge into the river. I'm watching in slow motion this gum wrapper go down I guess the current of the river and going to the lakes, and seeing, the current, pick up trash and needles and cat litter and take out baggies, all the fast foods and all collecting. And I realized at that moment, looking down again, looking at my contribution to being good or bad. And again, not that, I should say, excuse me, my contribution to human error. It's really important. I want to say that, correct that. So I think for me, I saw that, and that kind of triggered, and again, not in physical form, that just triggered something within my spirit about how one action has an effect on everybody. And I remember seeing that and seeing, these toxins, the oil refineries, and all the pollution, all being a part of just not consciously aware of what we were doing to our planet. So I got that moment. And then I think for me, I guess seeing myself in physical form on the operating die on November the 11th at 11:11 p.m. in operating room 11 for 1 minute and 11 seconds. So I say that because 11:11 was the impact, the monumental, coming back. When I did come back, I had to know what that meant. That was just, I was driven by that. And so I saw that, and, I celebrate my birthday on 11/11. I go off to the planet until 11:29, because 2 and 9 equals 11. And I go to ley lines. I do grid work. I do a gratitude list. I do a list of where I didn't shine, going back to my human error, where I was perhaps rude to the pharmacist, or had a call with a credit card company disputing something, and my actions towards somebody else, their reaction to me, and how we got on that bandwagon of negativity. And I forgive myself and ask for me to move to a higher place of consciousness for those things that took place in my life. I bless every moment. Tomorrow morning when I get on my bike ride, I'll go to the river here and where I live, and say thank you, God, for allowing me to spend some time with Kato. That's just who I am. That's a part of, I think, for me, is my gratitude. When we are in a place of gratitude, we have a tendency to, it's like when we go into this place of meditation, we go into this place of sleeping, when we go into this place of peace, we're actually, downgrading our consciousness to upgrade our consciousness. And so by doing that, it allows me, when I'm in a place of gratitude, where I'm not out of place, how much is this, and can I get this, and what about that job, and what about this gig? And I don't do that. I bless, thank you for this moment. Because I think what I learned on the other side, when you're in a place of gratitude, you manifest. When you're at a place of peace, you manifest. When you're in a place of get, it's kind of like blank. And I think spiritual people will get that. So as I said, as I'm seeing all this, a part of my experience on my life review, and how gratitude is extremely important, and also how we contribute to everything on this planet. There are no victims. We can't blame, if you're in a bad relationship, you have a choice to do something about the relationship. If you're in a bad job, you have a choice to do something. We kind of forget that we are the navigators of our life, and that our choices basically, it's like an action begets a reaction, begets an outcome. And that's what I learned. That, for me, made sense. In my logical world, when I came back, those things that I took back with me, and there were a lot, but for me, I began to apply these things in my life, and I started seeing results. I went in again, as I said, the doctor said no, the priest said no, the rabbi said no, everyone was no. And it wasn't until the shampoo bowl that came along, the lady said yes. And the reason why her yes moment, because she told me what happened to her on the other side. And there I was with the kindred soul for the first time. So her yes became my spiritual flag, my quest. And that's when I began to study numerology.
Excellent. Well, let's dive into this this lady then, this shampoo lady, we'll call her, and the recognition. And then I want to ask you two questions about the life review.
Sure.
So I love the fact that you brought up something new to me that I've never heard before. And when I get that, I get intrigued and really excited. So NDE people, how do they recognize each other?
Have you ever gone to a party and you walk in, and this little aha says, this isn't for me?
Yeah, we do that most times people. I go out.
Yeah. I mean, you realize your energy is not identifying with that energy in the room, because everything, if you understand that everything is based on energetic matter. How I became a paranormal investigator was because of numerology. Numerology teaches that math is a vibration, that math is a frequency. Math is correct. 1 + 1 = 2. It does not equal 49. And so for me, I think it's what she said and how she said it. And I go back to that African-American woman with those kind eyes. Her eyes were kind. I think, like me, she went through a lot, meaning, again, back in the 90s, we didn't talk about things like this. It's almost as though we had our own little moments by ourselves. And I can testify, I'm sure she did as well, could. You certainly didn't say anything to your spouse or your neighbors, your coworkers. No one believed you. They just didn't believe you. I might as well have talked about, being abducted by a UFO and having a party night all night long and dancing with the aliens, and they were all the green little creatures they put me in. It just wasn't, people's consciousness was not acceptable at the time for this information. So you find those ears and those souls that you identify with. The solar plexus never lies to you. Your solar plexus, the yellow energy, the chakra there, will always attract, because as a reader, as a psychic, as an intuitive, as a numerologist, when I'm reading for people, I am rotating energy from my solar plexus to their solar plexus. And so, as I said, I could feel, going back to that cord that I said earlier, I could feel that connection to her solar plexus. And I could tell by looking at Kim's eyes, I know what she experienced on the other side, because there are things that only someone who's had a near-death experience can identify with. And so her words just echoed in my ears.
Is
Does that
it?
answer your question in a very
It,
long-winded way?
no, it does, but I also want to supplement it again with one more question, which is
Sure, sure, sure.
you recognize energy patterns of someone, right? That
Hmm.
you, let's just say you and her vibrated at the same frequency, for lack of a better terminology. Is it that when you come back, you're slightly out of whack with everyone else's slight vibrations, so that you then pick it up that way?
Thank you. Excellent question. Excellent question. You come back hypersensitive. You come back hypersensitive to your environment. You come back hypersensitive to the animal kingdom. You come back hypersensitive to people around you, to negativity, to love. You come back a completely different person. It's as though what happens to you on the other side, it's almost as they go up there and they kind of rethread your spiritual DNA.
Hmm. I understand it, and I'm going to give you another anecdote about my life, right, which is nowhere near an NDE, but it gives me a window into it, the experience, which is to say, I broke my ankle, right, yonks ago playing football, and they said you can't play football again, right? And then as soon as that happened, I started noticing the environment around me, in that hyper aware state, and I started appreciating where I lived more, and that's nowhere near your NDE experience, but it's along the same
But I'm going to
lines.
correct you right there because this is very important. This is what I wanted to say.
Ah.
We call this an exit point. Have you heard of this phrase before? An exit point is oftentimes when people who have not had near-death experiences, but they have moments in life. An example like an injury, a divorce, being fired from a job. You are put in a new state of awareness, and you become again hypersensitive to everything around you. When something is taken away from you, such as an injury, such as you can't play, you can't do this, then you come back with a whole different. For me, I can't paint, draw, sketch, abstract, carve, nothing. The very, I look at this hand, which was, or both hands, that was a brilliant gift, and in my mind, I know what the hand did, but I can't do it. So that thing that gift that was taken away from me matters. But it also allowed me to go to another area of endeavor. And I think that's what happened to you. It brought you to a new phase in your life and awareness.
Yeah, well, that's what I take it. It's just slightly adjusted my path. I
Mm-hmm.
might not necessarily have known it in terms of
A
my
little
job or
nudge.
whatever, but it might
Yeah.
nudge me in the mental state, is the way I
Right.
look at it. So let me get to the two questions I had about the life review. And one of these will be you were seeing a review in flashes of images, is what you're getting at.
All right.
Is every single one of those images an important point, i.e., a save point in the
Absolutely.
game?
Absolutely. Have you seen The Matrix
Yes.
with Keanu Reeves? Okay.
Hmm.
I love how they take those little cubicles of every moment of his life. And, for those of us, that's our life. You're looking at every moment, again, 0 to 60, seeing yourself blow out candles on a birthday cake, seeing yourself playing in a park, seeing yourself playing soccer. Every moment, every image, every module matters because that's your life. And every second is recorded. So again, going back to, you see this layer of advancement, you see this layer of awareness, you see this layer of where you didn't shine, where you did shine. Every moment of your life matters. Every breath that you take matters. So that is important. Yes.
Right, but each slice, it wasn't like, say, you might have taken 10 slices from year two, 8 slices from year three. Was it like that, or was it almost the entire thing?
Everything
Okay.
from 0 to 60, born, baby, feeding on the bottle. It was lightning speed. And I go back to and see, put away logic, okay,
Hmm.
and look at the other side. Every split second of your life, that's what you're experiencing. Every moment. There is one moment that's not important.
Mm. That's an answer I wasn't expecting, but I like it. But this would have been the second question if it was slightly different. But it's important I raise it, which is to say, imagine if it was just X amount of slices per year, right? And we could say 100%, those are the really important moments, i.e., the save points in your game. Let's call it that. if you had another near-death experience, would you have different frames?
I've had another near-death experience.
Oh, was it the exact same movie played then?
You know what happened? On November the 11th at 11:11 p.m., I clinically died with a perforated viscus. Okay.
Okay.
On 7/4/2009. Oh, and going back, excuse me, 11:11, operating room 11, 1 minute, 11 seconds, the AIDS epidemic. Flash forward to 07/04/09. At 1:11 in the afternoon, I'm rushed to the hospital. I had casting directors here in town prior. I can't remember how long it had been, and I thought I had food poisoning. I didn't realize that I had some kind of. The doctor thought that I had traveled overseas and got into a lake with some kind of. It was a tapeworm. Tapeworms got inside into my intestinal tract.
Oh, lovely.
And were eating away at my intestinal tract and laid eggs, and it was horrible. But I go back to 07/09 2009 11/11. I go back into what time? 1:11 p.m. in the afternoon. I also, and what you don't realize, the person I was having a conversation with, and I don't want to disclose the name because this is a celebrity, and so I don't want to do that.
Yeah, sure.
But also was who I was celebrating my birthday with, and who was the last person I spoke to on 07/09, 07/04, which was our 4th of July holiday, 2009, to that same celebrity. So call it a reminder, an awakening, a quinky dinky. Yeah, it's
a synchronicity.
Back to your question. There are,
I like it, but it didn't quite answer the question, which was to say, on that second NDE, did you see the exact same life review?
No, I didn't go into a life review with this particular thing as much
okay.
as I saw prophecy and where we were going as a collective consciousness.
I gotcha. Okay, I understand. I'd be interested to find out, though, if someone does have 2 full life reviews via NDEs. First, they'd be either unlucky or amazingly blessed, however you want to look at it. But would they be their exact same frequent, thing? It kind of has to be if what you said is true.
I'll say this too. So let's go back to, I was a certain age, in the late 80s, right? And here I'm a certain age in 2009.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of territory to cover from, 90 to 2000 to 2009. So yeah, there's, did I have that experience? No, I didn't. But it was a whole, and I don't want to give too much on it because I'm writing about that experience in my second book. And I'm going to go into a whole nother level of consciousness.
I wonder then, if you did have a second NDE, whether it would just pick up the story like from your last one. Do you know what I mean? Like a second chapter.
like a sequel, huh?
Yeah. It's an interesting thought.
Hey. It was, I think for me, because there was so much that I had to uncover and dissect and understand. And I think, and for many of us who've had this experience, you do a lot of internal homework because so many people don't believe. And so you get into this, at least I did, this me, myself, and I isolation of you try to figure out. And that's what I did. So from that moment of my history, all the way up until 2009, a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of, and of course my career just took off because of my numerology. But it was again, the second book will go into this, a lot of what happened, because it's pretty. I go into ley lines, I go into consciousness, I go into choice. I'm going to go into aliens. I'm going to go into energy grids on the planet and why. I go into, having been a paranormal investigator for so many years. When you go into an example like a crime scene, being hypersensitive, you start picking up images, and I do that through math.
I know, and it's very interesting, the maths thing, and we'll cover that again in a sec if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
No, not at all, because I want to cover it. So if I hadn't have it written down, I would have asked a question then regardless. So thank you for that. But so you have your life review. What happens there or then?
Um, having seen all this, having experienced all this, I was given a choice. I was able to go into this place called Bordeaux. In the Buddhists believe this is the in-between stage. I call it the cleansing stage. The Catholics look at it as purgatory. I got a chance to see a lot more of where the planet was going. I got a chance to see where I was going. It's almost as though I'm dealing with past lives, my past experiences, where I shine, where I didn't shine. And now I'm having this conversation with an entity. I call it God. And I never really quite, even growing up as Catholic, I always had this, it's not that I doubted, but I've always been one, I need concrete information. I need proof. And as a child growing up, I needed proof. I didn't understand why there was a talking snake. We don't have one today. I didn't understand the crossing of the Red Sea because it didn't make sense to me. That's where I was as a child, going to Catholic school and catechism, all that Catholicism just, shoved in my throat. So for me, having this conversation with this entity, which is fragment. So I talk about this quite a bit. Before me, it's almost as though I was looking into the sun, and there are all these particles, energetic matter, that I can feel. And I remember this particle went from, and again, there's no back because I'm in ethereal form, but it's as though I could feel it going into my back, into my solar plexus, and out into here. And I was given a choice. Do you want to go back? And I say that, do you want to go back? And I saw myself traveling. Here I saw myself writing books. I saw myself no longer stuttering. I saw myself traveling extensively. I saw myself doing numerology and seeing clients. I saw my career rise and fall. I saw it all. And I saw where this planet was going, which was interesting enough for me. Well, we can talk about that a little bit later. But do you want to go back? And I remember one particular image that I saw was us as a mankind, humankind. And I mentioned this earlier. We're angry. And I think what I talk about, and this is where it gets kind of iffy, but what I saw was that we put so much faith in the politicians who were so eager to take our power away. And to me, it goes back to choice. And we kind of sit back and just allow it. And I think what I realized that one person does make a difference. And it's not that what I saw, because I wasn't certain what's going to make a difference. I didn't think that. It wasn't about get something and go do it. I'm going back because I got to do that. It wasn't that at all. But it was that I was given a choice. And I remember looking down at what we were doing to our planet. And I remember this coming out of me, whether it, verbally came out of, Peter Anthony, or whether it came from soul. I don't know where it came from when I said, this is not what God intended. That, I remember, just came out of my mouth, my soul, my knowing. And do you want to go back? And I said, yes. So I think for me, the choice was made, and I gladly accepted that choice. And I think phase 4 of this is, for me, was the most difficult part of my life. And we can talk about that. So if you have any questions about that particular incident.
I have one thing about the choice side of things. For me, it's a big word in my life because I've been saying it for years amongst friends and family. Everything's a choice. Just make a choice. It's up to you, essentially, to govern your life how you see fit. But it's interesting that you were offered a choice, because when I hear from other people about other NDEs, they're always not given a choice. It's a case of, no, you can't stay here because they want to. You've got to go back. But you were offered a choice.
I was offered a choice to go back. And we go, I want to say something too, because you look at the different layers of where I went through with the tunnel, the codes, the math, the consciousness, the judgment, the people, the planetary, where we're going as far as environment and planetary responsibilities. It's not like I was, went to grad school with my near-death experience, because I in the early years, I was afraid to talk about that choice because so many were not given a choice, but there was a few that were given a choice. And I think making that choice to come back and coming back into the earth plane and looking back at that moment, it was pivotal for me. Because I think for me, and again, every lesson, every narrative experience will have their own experience to discuss with you and their interpretation of it. I was talking about past lives way before the near-death community was talking about it. I was talking about mathematical codes way before anyone else was talking about it. I'm not trying to say I know more than they. I was just saying my experience allowed me to see these things. And I was given a choice, knowing, the good, knowing the bad. And I said yes. So it was important for me. I can't speak for those who were not given a choice. I think oftentimes for those who are not seeing a life review, they're given just a glimpse of the other side. And so they do go back. Maybe their soul was not prepared to leave because of children, because of whatever. I can't answer that question.
I know it's a difficult one, but I just find it an interesting thing, and I like it. I like the rogue elements. Not that I'm calling you a rogue element, but you know what I mean.
No, but I have gone where a lot of people don't go, and the only one that has ever gone there, and way beyond my knowledge, is Dr. Grayson, who talks about this. I've worked on many documentaries, and I've talked about so many different things. I'm working on a current documentary, and I'm talking to producers and exec producers who are not getting the importance of past lives and getting the choice in the environment. I'm having to take something very complex and break it down into simplistic terms because they're afraid that the audience won't get it. And my response to that is the audience will definitely get it. If you visually give them some homework, something to see, and something that resonates within heart chakra, they will get it. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to digress there, but yeah, I'm very proud of the choice that I made and to come back. I just wasn't prepared for going back for that answer because it was riddled with a lot of pain, a lot of hurt.
Yes. Now, I think that's an important point also you raised about the TV side of things. And I think television is quite guilty of this, of dumbing things down because they think the audience is dumb. But that's actually not the case. The majority of people aren't dumb. And the ones that might not be as bright as the others have the want to learn more, or the mystery then drags them in to then learn more. So TV shouldn't do that. That's just my thoughts.
Well, and giving them credit, they're all about money. How much money can we make on this series? How much money can we make through advertising? I mean, the bottom line, and we are guilty of all this, but many different parts of that money thing, it all comes down to that. So as I said, there's a formula, that works in Hollywood. And that's that formula that has been there for quite some time. And I don't think so many people are willing to do that. So throughout our years of industry, you'll see those breakthrough directors. I mean, I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan. I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder. I'm a big fan of, the other one that did Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, and they got, I'm blank right now.
That's right. Which film? And I'll see if I can help you.
Oppenheimer, Rebel Moon, I love it. And I'm trying to think the other director. Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, and I'm blank right now.
Give me a film that he did, and then I'll tell you if I can remember.
I'm blank with this right now. Okay. I'm just everything because I got asked that question the other day, and I'm like, these 3 movies you've got to see, and now I'm totally blank. I'll come back.
Oh, never mind. That's okay.
It'll re-image in my mind again.
Exactly. It'll jog in.
Yeah.
All right. So you make a choice, you go back, and this is where the fun begins.
Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. Guy Ritchie. Yeah, I like his films, to be fair. And I watched Oppenheimer the other day, and I watched Rebel Moon. I wasn't a massive fan of that one, by the way. But I like Zack Snyder.
I'm the kind of person, because I do backstories, and I like to see, again, having been in film for over 30 years, I'm the person that was what goes on set. And what I like about Zack Snyder is that his actors, his crew, come together for one voice. I'm currently working on something right now that we are all so differently with a different voice that goes on. and we're not there as one voice. And that's what I like about Zack Snyder. And his vision of how he does things is all about giving the actor a choice. So for me, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
That's
because
why
that
like
brings out skills in people, doesn't it? It allows them to come,
yes,
the cream to come
it
to the
gives them
top.
freedom. It gives them the
Yes.
choice to do something with. I have an idea where I think directors go in with, this is what we're going to do. We're going for this shot, and this is what I want you to do. And if an actor is reading a script and it doesn't make sense why we're doing this, how can they portray the best part of that character through their acting skills? So anyway, that's why I like Zack Snyder. I just love his work. Anyway,
Yeah, I
big
do as
fan of
well,
all three.
and I want to quickly throw in here. I loved his director's cut of the superhero one, Justice League. I love that.
Justice League.
That 4 hour version was
And
amazing. Yeah, I love that one.
yeah, as I said, everything that what I look for, because I'm editing, I'm looking at film, I'm creating, yeah, and sure, like what you'll be doing later. I mean, it's just all about transition and movement of storyline that people get, and I think that's what's so important. That's why I like them, because they're kind of innovators. I mean, if you go back to Spielberg when he shot the movie Jaws, he didn't have a shark, so he kind of created an image of a shark in the water, even though there was no shark in the water, and that became a very huge success of scaring people and giving the idea that there's something in the water, but we don't know what it is because he didn't have the shark. So we had to use our imagination of what was in the water. So everyone, to me, as I said, when I look at something, I look at what's going on behind the scenes. That's important to me.
Yeah, of course. That film Jaws, by the way, gave me and my brother nightmares for quite a long time.
Have you ever read the book?
I haven't. No. Even worse, yeah.
Oh my God! I had to put that book down. I no, that to me, that whole scene in the ocean with that girl, it gave all of us nightmares. So but I couldn't tell you how many pages I read. I said, nope, not reading this.
Nope. Okay, so you move back then, presumably. How do you get into your body? How did that manifest
Great question.
itself?
Thank you. Another great question that no one's ever asked. When you're coming in from the other side, the afterlife, the ethereal plane, if you will, you are fragmented energy. Got it? Just imagine little rays of sunlight, particles, matter coming in to the earth plane, and those matters, connecting into physical form. I remember as soon as I hit my body, when soul met physical body, when spirit met physical body, I remember it was almost as though I was in a car wreck, and I could feel my solar plexus again, as though that cord that I mentioned earlier in our interview was snapped back onto my solar plexus. And here's the thing, I could smell the drugs. I could hear, even though I was unconscious for 3.5, 4 weeks, everything that was going on in that room with eyes being closed, I could sense and feel. But I just remember I could smell those drugs. I remember that pain, the hurt. I could feel the surgery in my intestinal, also, my anal tract. I could feel all that, and the nausea and that was not my moment. It just wasn't.
No.
So physically, yes, that was difficult. It's almost as like, and I have no proof of how this works, but imagine as a child being born, and that initial pain of coming into birth, coming into physical form, into a new world, to a new physical form. So I have a great respect for women who give birth to children. That's how I felt. I felt like I was being birthed, and I kind of was, actually, because I came back, as I said earlier, kind of a rewiring of a person.
I have two questions here.
I know for a fact it's changed. Sure.
Yeah, two more questions. One relating to how you were rewired, because I want to address that, because I had a conversation very recently with somebody else that is very pertinent here. But the first question is, did it go from no pain, no feeling to almost, was it like instant pain, or was it a sort of gradual, oh, there's the pain?
Impact.
Okay.
It was impact. That's what I said earlier. It was like that car when everything goes back in slow motion, and you feel the brakes being, pushed upon, and that moment of impact. For me, it was like this, and here. I mean, if I don't remember this at all. I don't remember my physical body jumping up, but I just remember this part of it, the pain here, and I could feel the pain of the surgery. Again, hypersensitive to everything around me, and again, the drugs. I'm still to this day, I can walk into a room, do cardio, work out, and I can smell drugs as though I'm a German Shepherd or a lab that's sniffing out drugs. I can smell chemicals. I don't know why, but I'm hypersensitive to all these different things, to light, to color, to sound, to the animal kingdom. Again, it's like all this was just changed for now, for the rest of my life.
Okay, there's a reason I asked that question, and it's not
Sure.
always throw myself into the story, but it's more, I say these things as an understanding of what you went through.
Well, you're asking for your audience too.
Yes, exactly. Because other people may have gone through the anxiety that I did at that point in my life, and I'm relating it to the fact that you have the sort of like inner shakes in your body, right? And you feel it in your stomach and in a little bit in your head, but it's mainly your sort of like middle of your body. And then when you're asleep, you don't feel anything, but then when you start to wake up, it gradually flows back in like the sea coming on the beach again. And I thought it might be like that, where it just washes over you, and then there's that crap feeling, it's back.
Now, going back to this, when I opened my eyes and saw the nurses and the doctors, that feeling took place that you're describing. But when my soul, spirit hit the physical body, imagine, again, I'll go back to using film. Imagine a darkened room, and you feel something physically touching the physical body. That's what it was like for me. It was an impact moment. I just remember that. It was, cool. Not a car wreck, but just an impact moment.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nice. Okay, the second question, or the other bit I wanted to get to, was the rewiring bit. Now, I spoke to a lady called Denise Stoner recently, and she's famously been taken by aliens, right? And she said, as part of that experience, she had a near-death experience, and when she came back changed. Now, I know you came back changed because you lost your artistic skills and gained other skills. But she puts it down to, when she came back, it wasn't Denise Stoner that came back, it was a previous life personality that come back. So my question will be to you, are you Peter Anthony, or are you a previous life?
Loaded question, great question. Again, me, 7 years of trying to figure out what happened to me. Some experts says, "Oh, you came back as a walk-in." Some people come back and say, you're, like you said, another lifetime. But I'm still trying to figure that out, because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, and I think that's such a pivotal question to so many who are trying to figure that out.
Do your friends and family think you changed in terms of personality?
Well, let's go to this.
I do apologize, because you did say earlier about family. I'm sorry about that one.
So no. But I mean, what little bit of family I do have don't talk to me. Friends, when I came back and I opened my eyes and I'm talking to the doctors and the nurses about, me here, you talk about 0 to 60. I had a conversation with God, and I saw the planet, I saw all the different codes, and I was just so excited to talk, and I wasn't stuttering. I was like, no, like I was on, some kind of drug, and I just couldn't shut up. I was so eager to talk about what happened to me. And you'd have to understand too, going back to the earlier Peter Anthony, if you got a nod out of me, you got a yes or no out of me, boy, he spoke a lot today. I completely changed from the person that I used to be, rather stoic. You can't get me to shut up. I'm so happy and eager to talk about life and what happened to me. And I think, as you're watching the faces of the doctors and nurses and those that did visit you, they look at you as though you're a whack job, they just look at you differently. And I learned early on to keep these thoughts and ideas to myself, because back then, people weren't willing to listen to it.
Ultimately, what you're saying, integrating yourself back into your personal and professional life after your NDE was difficult.
Extremely difficult. Yes, very difficult. So imagine you're working in the news division, you're looking at politicians, and now you're hypersensitive and you're really seeing the truth behind what they're saying. Imagine seeing people, cheat you out of money. Imagine you know that your boss is doing something underhanded. You look at life differently and how you fit in with the scheme of things going on. So yeah, you're a different person. And then also, it's not like, and I was on a quest. I wanted to talk to the priest, the rabbi. I wanted to talk to any, men and women of the cloth. I didn't care. I wanted answers. And I wasn't getting any answers. Just wasn't. Again, there wasn't any information that much about near death. So I began to go to the library. We didn't have Google back then. So I spent my life at that 7 years of digesting and understanding and just trying to figure out, what happened to me. Because again, the opinions of others mattered more than my own opinion. So for me, as I said, the research I did, and you know what? So grateful for that moment, that I call that quiet phase of my life to study. It saved my life.
Do you think you're on the right path now, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you're on the right path now?
I'm on the path that I think is best for me today. I think it's almost like, you're asking an athlete, are you prepared for the game? Well, I still have a lot of homework to do. I still have a lot of training to do. That's how I feel.
Cool. So let's dive into the skill side of things. The lost skill, that's intriguing. And then your other skills, such as numerology. Why do you think you lost the art? And why do you think you gained the code stroke numerology?
Predestined. I think I think the path where I was going, and again, me interpreting, I don't know, may not have been the right path. I think when we come in, if you understand, as you come into this earth plane, you've already made, if you understand the Akashic records, who your parents are going to be, the name that you choose, where you're born, all your life lessons. I mean, that's a contract that you make on the other side. When you come back, this is where you have to go, and this is what you've chosen to do. And this is your choice on the other side, that other realm. You do this, and I think was getting off the beaten path, and I was going in to that industry for the wrong reasons. So I think for me, it's almost like a timeout or recess, where I think the universe said, sit down, your real path, you made this contract to do this, and get back to your original plan. Again, that's just me pulling information. It may not be that at all, but that's how I felt. The other thing too that began to happen to me, it's almost as though if I had a shaking hand as a reminder where I couldn't paint anymore, God would have accepted that. But that's not what happened. The more and more I studied numerology just to find out what was going on, it got to the point that, and again, you'd have to be an artist. Maybe you are an artist, but touch, your sense of feel, your sense of connection to the canvas, your sense of color scheme, that you have a visual understanding of what's going to go here. It's almost like you're psychically connected to the canvas, and you're just touching the canvas, and you know what you have to do. That was leaving me. And what was coming in, I went from right brain creativity to left brain logic. So that tug of war that was going on between the right and left side of the brain hemisphere were just constantly battling, but this was losing. And then I think also, as I began to study the numerology codes, just basic numbers 1 through 9, I was fascinated by it, because I've always been fascinated by, as I said earlier, that whole talking snake and the crossing of the Red Sea, all that stuff. I began, as I studied numerology, began to see these parallels of our biblical prophecy and the revelations and all that stuff connected to numerology, then I began to see color, math, and sound attached to numerology. Everything that we do in this world, and I think Spielberg brought it to our attention, color, sound, and math all connect as one. And I think for me, what I began to understand the further I got into this part of this spiritual realm is that we cannot go anywhere forward until we understand religion, science, and New Age thought philosophy all merged as one. That's what I've learned, that you can't have one leading the world in consciousness. Everything needs to come together as one consciousness. That's just my personal belief. I have nothing to back it up, but that's what I'm learning from the studies. That's subject to change tomorrow. But I think for me, losing this, though it was amazing, was probably the best thing that happened to me in my life.
So you don't miss it? You don't miss it, do you?
Yeah. I even tried to, back in the early 2000s, I had a home and I had a garage space that I wanted to turn into an art studio. And so I bought paints and brushes, canvases, and I would go there, nothing. Nothing was flowing, nothing felt connected to. So it was a big disappointment. And I think the reality was, you need to let this go, move on. I, in fact, had a conversation with someone who knows me and my artistic abilities and knew me years and years ago. And she was shocked when she saw one of my podcasts that I'm no longer painting. She just couldn't understand this. Brenda, I even threw all my art brushes away, everything, colors, everything, just in the dumpster, and said goodbye to it and moved on. It was really tough, but I did it. I need to let go of that and move on to this paradigm.
And I like that there's another phrase I like to use, which is let it go. It's the acceptance and letting go, because then that helps you immediately get onto the next part, doesn't it? So I think that plays a big part. Let's give people...
Well, it allows me to flow. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. It just allows me to flow. Yeah,
makes sense. I was just going to say, before we branch into all the questions about numerology, can you give the audience listening now what it is? How would you describe it?
What numerology is?
Yes.
Okay. Most of us understand astrology, and as I break it down to my clients who come to see me, astrology is based on planetary activity. We go birthday to birthday, and here's, we have the full moon, the lunar cycles here. We have, presently on January the 20th, we have Pluto going into Aquarius, which is going to kind of allow mankind to think ahead and, be more innovative. We're going to leave behind the nasty politics, hopefully within this next 10 years, and branch into a new way of thinking. I think of Aquarius as new age, new thought, higher consciousness, higher learning, higher abilities. So as I said, so you associate all astrology with planetary activity. Everyone has a zodiacal sign, so the Leo represents, performing, Capricorn is about career and money. Aries is about leadership. Everyone has a certain particular that they come back with. And then numerology, which is interesting, every letter in your name represents a previous lifetime vibration. It took me years to understand that. So an example, when you look at the letter K, if that's your first name on your birth certificate, is it? Or what is your another name? Christopher, is it?
Paul's my first name.
Paul. Okay, so P represents 7. 7 is the disciple. So in your previous lifetimes before, you were torn between religion and a new way of thinking, and it didn't quite mesh with your conscience at the time. So in this lifetime, you would have to uncover, discover, and explore, and share truth as you understand it. The A is about leadership, not being afraid to go forward with your new way of thinking. The U in your letter represents one's communication skills. You'd have to perfect those. So, and every letter represents something. So what I do, I take the name and break it down, and then I have a formula of what lies ahead of you as a client. Then I take the birthday numerology, right? And your birthday represents, this is what I've chosen. And that doesn't go away. You make a choice on the other side when you come back and you're born, let's say February the 20th, 1993. This is your life path number. This is what you're here to do. Now, it's like this, and very easy. You make a contract. Now, whether you do it tomorrow, the next day, whatever, you have a choice in this lifetime to fulfill that obligation. And if you don't, you're going to come back the next lifetime and do it. An example, let's say you were an alcoholic in a previous lifetime, and because of that, the disease of alcoholism, you never got sober. So that, coming back with the letter P in your name, I look at, is there drug addiction? Is this guy any kind of formal addiction that he needs to overcome? Is there a doubting Thomas in part of your chart? And what you're here to do with that. So every letter to me means something from a previous lifetime, and I break it down that way. And it gives me a map, a roadmap of who you are and where you're going and what's next. And numerology does that. I take astrology, numerology, and I combine those one. And you can work with the planetary aspects and work with the mathematical vibrations.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's a science or a study, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it, that will look back and forward into life and then where you're going, that sort of thing.
Well, here's, we look at our past, we look at our now, we look at where we're going. They're all one, basically. And numerology and astrology teach us we're all given a choice. I can tell you that, if an example, let's say you're driving down the road and I said, well, if I were you, I would not take that path because there's a storm coming. And I think it's best, even though this is the longer way to get there, that you take that. My job as a numerologist and astrologist is to point before you the map that lies ahead, right? You have free will, choice. You decide to take the road that's easy greasy, and you get there and you have a flat tire, and then you run out of gas, and then the storm comes and you're stuck. Your choice. You still get to your destination, but what I teach people is make wiser choices, because this road ahead of you is full of storms, where even though this may be or seems to be a long, boring drive, you're going to get to your destiny much faster. So you give them a choice, and that's what I think numerology does. It teaches people, these are my possibilities, this is my roadmap. I'm the navigator, I'm the driver, and I make the choice to drive, fast or to go slow. Everyone is a different navigator. And through the breakdown of the numerology chart, I try to explain that to them. I look at their shortcomings, I look at where they're going, I look at their family issues, I look at their, their handicaps, whatever that might be, and I give them an outline. Does that make sense? It's
Yes.
kind of a long-winded breakdown, but it just, it basically breaks down character analysis and your destiny through your choices.
Now, a question that comes to mind from that will be, is astrology, and therefore by extension numerology, are they cheat codes baked into the universe itself that you are tapping into to read the code of the design? I hope that question makes sense.
Well, it does and it doesn't, but I'll answer it. I think for me, it's nothing more than a vehicle for me to, when I break down someone's chart, again, astrology gives us particular pinpoints. On an example, January the 20th, we shift into a new paradigm of consciousness. Got it? Numerology says you're going in as a doubting Thomas. Now, if you're shifting into this new way of consciousness and you're going with the doubting Thomas, then it says to me, you need to kind of be open-minded to this and change. If not, you're kicking and screaming. When these events take place in your life, the choices you make or not make basically have repercussion. So I basically give people an outline to follow by. Again, as I said, I merge the two as one. A lot of people don't do that. Who was it? And you might know this, I can't remember his name. He counseled Elizabeth and Henry VIII, and is it John Nees? I can't remember. He was one of the few astrologers and numerologists of his time during the 1500s who was able to use both symbols, both metaphysical sciences as one. I think it was John Nees. I could be wrong.
I don't know the name, no.
Yeah, but anyway, if you do his research, he's also considered a time traveler of that time. So he was quite skilled as a numerologist and astrologer. And I don't know why through my I guess history of understanding astrology, and then I began to understand numerology, and as I merged them as one, it just made sense to me as a person who's helping people out with their choices. All I do is say, this is what's here. You have a choice. if you see a car wreck in someone's choice and you explain to them, you don't want to do it in a way that, well, there's a car wreck tonight and you have to avoid that. Don't go on that road. And they're going to freak out and they don't want to go anywhere. They get paranoid. But I don't say that it's a car wreck. I say, if it were me, I would just avoid accidents that night and go down here. You give them a choice and you do it subtly and diplomatically so people tend to freak when you give them too much information that's negative. So I scale my words correctly.
Yeah, I get that side of it. What I probably, let me rephrase it then slightly.
Sure.
Is the universe basically a big mathematical equation or a big code, and we are the visual part in front? That's the perfect question. And you're seeing in. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. So does that then say that we are in the Matrix ultimately?
Yes.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. And that seems to be a big thread of where we're going with, with our thinking, I think. Not just me and you, but people in general.
No, I mean, so here again, and I'm going to say this. So my near-death experience happened, 30 years ago? We weren't even talking about this. 2020, when everything shut down as a result of COVID, I was on a boat tour. I had traveled for 3 years on a boat tour, and I was going overseas promoting, my book, Keymaster, and then promoting my next book, The Accidental Prophet. And everything shut down. Then all of a sudden, everyone said, "Oh, we got to do Zoom meetings." So we started doing that, and which is interesting because then we kind of fast forwarded to a whole new way of interviewing people. And your shows and other people's shows, all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, all these secondary markets and these, gypsy, witchy woo-woo kind of podcasts have now become very popular. The producers I work with currently are now, rather than doing research, and going and Googling and actually getting the hard, cold facts, they're listening to shows like yours because of the people that you have on. Because there's nothing like hands-on experience, right? Rather than reading boring books that don't make sense, you have someone here talking about their near the experience and talking about choice. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how everything kind of maps into where we're going in this next 10 years. And so imagine what I've seen in the last 30 years with no by the medical community, by the religious community, by therapists, by friends and family, co-workers, to now I'm lined up with all kinds of interviews because what I'm saying now makes sense. And let me tell you why it makes sense. We don't have faith in our leaders. We don't have faith in our government. We don't have faith in our educational system. We certainly don't have faith in our economy. So where do people turn? They go within. And they start thinking and searching and processing. And all of a sudden they tap onto a show like yours, and there's some quinky dinky that goes on some serendipitous moment, something that I say or one of your guests says, and they go, that makes sense to me. Like me at the shampoo bowl, that makes sense to my consciousness. That was my truth. That was my aha moment. And your shows and every other people's shows or other host shows have opened up another realm of possibilities. And so you have to ask yourself, where am I going and what am I doing and how do I contribute to the shift of consciousness? You're doing it now. You guys basically are the founding fathers of New Age consciousness, whether you believe it in or not, or even understand it. You are.
I know, I 100% agree with that. Yes, because I think social media and all this, where we find ourselves now with the internet, allows truth to get out there, right? It's passing the gatekeepers, isn't it, of information, essentially. That's exactly what we're doing. The gatekeepers
of mainstream consciousness, and that's why there's such a polarity of consciousness going on right now. And I want to get, break it down to just simplistic terms here. But if you stop and think about it, we have a consciousness that's way ahead of consciousness and where we're going and what needs to be done, which is ruled by the Aquarius age of consciousness. It's where we're going, to an old paradigm of old thinking. No judgment, certainly a strong observation, but the men that make decisions about war and the pharmaceutical companies and our environment are men of their past. A good king knows when to step down. And we have a bunch of old men who don't want to step down. Sorry to say, that sounds very judgmental. Certainly a strong observation. So people like yourself and me, and there are a lot more skilled people with me who have a lot more knowledge, who are basically bringing new thought theory to people. And that's why I say you can't go forward without understanding religion. You can't go forward without new thought consciousness. And you certainly cannot go forward without science, because they're the intermediator between the two.
Yes, I agree. I think there's 3 levels at the moment, right? You've got, we'll call this layer 1. This is propaganda. Then you've
Yes.
got us in the middle, the new thing, or let's just call it the true world, right? 3D world that me and you are sitting in now. That's the reality. And if we want to talk about it, we can learn all about this, and then the other side. And then beyond that is what makes up the universe. So we'll call it the code, the matrix, afterlife, whatever you want to get at. So these people stopping us to get to level 3. But we're bypassing these and we're now here. And I think soon we'll know about everything, won't we? That's where I'm thinking it's going.
Well, it's quite simple. 1111, which basically was the first code that stepped into consciousness, is called the awakening. We, as awakened spirits, began to realize there's a lot more going on than what's been, than we've been taught. So I think if you understand what Aquarius does, Aquarius researches and studies. And we're in an area too with Sagittarius is all about higher learning, higher consciousness, higher thought, higher living. And so you have to kind of merge where we're going collectively as an intelligence. And then you add media, which what you guys are doing. I have to tell you, from 1990 until, okay, my first real aha moment came. Here I was studying, and I had that experience with the lady at the shampoo bowl. So it was kind of, dry, flat, nothing going on, right? And then I studied, and I began to study numerology. And then I got a phone call from a homicide detective that was working on a numerology case that involved special effects makeup. And he didn't say too much about it, but we're at a blocking point here, and we need to understand what these codes are. And the victim here is a special effects makeup artist. That's all the information I got. Mm-hmm. So when I showed up on the crime scene, never worked on a crime scene before, never even worked on any kind of case. When I showed up on the crime scene, and again, going back to hypersensitivity and just being, and this is a whole nother world, there's another show in the paranormal world. I can see spirits. I can hear spirits. And when I showed up in the backseat of this brown little unmasked car, if you will, with 2 homicide detectives, both of them up front, calling me a circus act, and they can't believe that I'm here. And it's just the whole politics of doing something, but they were at a standstill with these codes. And I supposedly was referred by a metaphysical bookstore that said, this guy's great with numerology, call him. And I did. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that the man that had shot, or excuse me, that had been killed by a neighbor down the street, they, according to them, was the victim. When I arrived on the crime scene, I turned to the lead homicide detective and said, no, this guy, in my understanding, what I'm seeing here is a pedophile. And it opened up a whole another can of worms. Fast forward to the punch, that led me to sightings, that led me to the History Channel, that led me to my career. I had 2 worlds going on in the media and secretly going and doing work as a paranormal investigator. So I was, leave one job and kind of put on my hat and glasses and go work on cases. So I was living a double life. So as I said, and the more and more I worked on these cases, the more and more I studied the numerology. So here's a good example. You have the time of death. You have, which is, you digit the time of death, and it gives us a solo number. You contact, or so your first contact is the first responding officer. He has a birthday. The person that was shot, what time did he die? Then you have an address before you, and you break that down to energetic matter. And so what I'm doing when I'm on the scene, it looks like I'm some mad scientist with all these numbers around me, boom, 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 dissecting and working out a mathematical code that basically math never lies, people do. And what I saw here was what I interpreted at that time was a man that was basically abusing children, which opened up a whole another route, which led me to many, many shows down the line. So as I said, when I get back to you and what you're doing, we weren't talking about this. I had to go behind the scenes. I wasn't allowed to be. I mean, imagine me of that period of time. I was considered a circus act. Now people don't even give it a second glance. They just, this is where we are. So so you you may not realize you're contributing more to the shift in consciousness than you can even begin to realize. Me on this end of the other side of the world appreciates you for allowing me to share my information.
And I appreciate you sharing the information. It's a double way street, isn't it? Two-way street. So I thank you a lot.
But here's what you've done, and you may not, and it's just secondary to you, kind of like my gift in numerology and astrology. You have a certain way of interviewing that allows me to feel free with you, and I want to share it with you. And I can see through you that you actually know your subject, and you're not judging me, you're not condemning me, and you're not. I've had so many interviews when they look at me going, you can just see in their expression they don't believe you, or they don't care. Or I did an interview not too long ago. I won't tell you where the host didn't realize I was watching her put her makeup on while she was interviewing me. Not really tuned into me. And she thought she'd turn off the video, and she's combing her hair, doing her video, and she's shaking her head, and I'm watching this, and I shut the interview down and said, this is not working.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Was she quite good at putting on the makeup?
So when you come along with your intelligence and your understanding, your subject, you have great questions. Oh, I'm eager to share.
Well, thank you for doing so. I appreciate the comments as well. Now, I'm conscious of time. I've got a lot more to go through, so I'm going to park some of that and just get into the question I ask everyone. And what we'll have to do is park any NDE and any psychic stuff that you currently do, because my question is this: what strange things have happened to you? Now, I have that because I not only speak to people in the paranormal theater, but like people from the animation side of things, because I'm into animation and stuff as well. So I have that. So is there something else that is strange that has happened to you that you could tell us of?
Yeah, I had something happen to me last week, and I can't explain it. I'm going to talk to a medical examiner. She works on only on murder cases, and I like her because she's extremely intelligent, and I call her Scully from the X-Files, because she applies her medical to the supernatural world. But I had something last Thursday between the hours of 2 and 4 p.m. that what I thought was I guess an magnetic pulse wave pierced right here through my chest, right through here. And I had like psychic flashes, and I thought, what is that? And then I thought, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? Am I losing consciousness? I didn't know. I was kind of freaked out by it all. And then the next thing you know, the next day, Greg Brayton, who I'm a big fan of, is talking about the tiles, I guess it's called the hum, H-U-M. And these, they're trying to figure out where these hums, why certain people who are in an elevated consciousness, not everyone, why they are experiencing these hums. And so I'm at the beginning stages of, I've got to explore this. And I mentioned to you before, the strangest things that have happened to me as I've traveled around the planet. I always do grid work, lay work, connect my chakras to the chakras of the planet. And I can tell you what I've seen firsthand has blown me away. I've stepped into other dimensions. I have time traveled.
That's a bold claim that I'd like to hear the answer to.
You and I could go down the road of the rabbit hole of possibilities here. So as I said, I've also seen spirits that I worked on a case here with a gangster named Al Capone that we couldn't get any images on it with our paranormal equipment, and nothing. I couldn't get connected to this man's evil spirit. And this is again July 4th. I'm having dinner with producers and cameramen and sound, and we're out at this resort where he was, or supposedly, where his secret hiding place was. And I said to one of the producers, he's here now. I can feel him. It was faint, but I could feel him. Anyway, fast forward to the punch. We went down this corridor where he would hide from the police back in the 30s. And I was there, and one of the Renee, I believe it was her name, when she was girlfriend of one of the sound techs there, stunning, stunning, stunning girl, just beautiful. And we walked down this corridor, and the next thing I know, she felt this presence come around her, and this spirit, Al Capone, picked me up and threw me against the wall. So I had never had any kind of demonic, any kind of paranormal case that I worked on that was evil. That was my first case on that. But I could smell death. When I say picked up and shoved against the wall, I could feel the hands on my shoulders being pressed against the wall. Renee running out screaming. What else have I seen? I could go down the list of the most unusual things I've experienced. And I think another thing too for your near-death community that no one's talking about, and hopefully someone will come forward with this, once you've had a near-death experience and you're hypersensitive to all Earth and its environments and its other side, its otherworldly layers, many of us have encounters with aliens.
I know, and I really want to get into that, but if I start going down these rabbit holes.
Oh, I know, but
I will expand out for hours myself. So I'd love to speak to you again in the future if you're amenable to it.
Absolutely, yeah. But I will leave you with this closing note. For those of us who have these experiences, it's basically called Nordic angels, kind of like the hierarchy of Pleiadian.
Yeah, the old Nordics.
And they tend to
love
come
those
to people with near-death experiences.
Right, Peter, we are now entering the Koit zone. Koit zone! Now, in the Koit zone, I will ask you just inane or random questions. It's just for a laugh and just to finish off on not a high note, but you know what I mean, a comedic fun note. So first thing, wallpaper or painted walls? Did you hear that?
Okay, you're shorting out, so I don't know what you just said.
Okay, no, first, I'll just do this again, just so I can cut it together. Peter, we are now entering the Koit zone. In the Koit zone, I will ask you inane or random questions. It's just about your personality, so just play along, have a laugh. That's all it's about. So, wallpaper or painted walls?
Painted walls.
Cool. Favorite cartoon?
Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck. I don't know why.
Back when the comedy was good in the cartoons.
Yes.
Exactly. What is your go-to ice cream flavor?
Anything that Baskin Robbins makes.
I don't know that, mate.
Or Ben and Jerry's. I just, Cherry Garcia. I love Cherry Garcia. Butter pecan. I have an ice cream fetish.
You like the lot, really. Yeah.
I love ice cream.
For you, what is the best time of day?
Morning.
Cool. Can you do any impressions?
No.
Next question. Can you really not do any impressions?
Gosh.
No, I'm only messing. You don't.
All right. There's. Hold on a second. I have to get into character here. I can't do it. Oh, here it goes. Do you remember when we used to go on safari? I would send you ahead, and there I would find you. Well, this time, I shall go ahead, and you must find me. Wasabi, how will I find you? I will build a big bonfire. That comes from out of Africa. I don't know why that comes to mind.
I wish I could know it.
Rendition, but that just comes to mind.
Well, thank you for doing it. You get points for playing along, so thanks for that. I genuinely, I know the film, but I don't know the character, so I can't say whether it was good or not. But I'm going to give you 9.6 out of 10 for the effort, so thank you. Can you cook?
I know. You're deliberately giving me high scores. I would give myself a 3 or 2.
Well, it was the effort that counts. It's the intention to play along that means most to me. Right. Can you cook? And if so, what do you do best?
Fusion. I love Italian food fused with Chinese food. I'm great at it.
Okay, fair play. I'm not a fan of foreign food, and I don't mean that in a horrible way, but I just have a very simple palate, so I can't relate because I don't know what you mean. But I think,
Yeah.
a mixture of
Well,
foods.
spaghetti and meatballs, sweet and sour chicken, which they usually put on rice. I just do it on pasta.
So you just throw loads of things in a pan all together and cook it. Job done.
Yes.
Here's a strange one. Hopefully you can answer it. What's the oldest bit of clothing you own?
My CBS jacket.
How long's that lasted with you so far?
I got this back in the 80s, um,
Hmm.
and I'm proud of it because every show I worked on, I got a pin. It kind of looks like a letter jacket that someone in high school would wear,
Oh
with
yes, yeah.
their, and I've got all kinds of pins working with the environment, working with different stars, and it's a jacket I'm very proud of it's a white jacket with CBS's logo on it. It says CBS News. It says CBS with the flag on the back. And I think when I die, people are going, what did he do? Why are all these pins on this jacket? But it is the oldest piece of clothing that I do own, and I haven't got rid of it yet.
Does it still fit you?
Yeah.
Quality. Well played. What's the best roller coaster or ride you've ever been on?
I don't like roller coasters.
Okay. Is
You know why?
ear imbalance, is it?
The whole 9 yards. I mean, I think, when I come back, it throws me off, and it takes me days and days and days and days to get back into. Again, I operate on a very sensitive ground, as an investigator. So I don't like to have anything. It's almost like I might as well have just, gotten drunk and stayed drunk for days. It's how it affects me. So I stay away from roller coasters. Now, I have no problem going through the love channel, the love canal, the boat that takes you like
Yeah, the simple things. Yeah.
simple little things, just a light little journey with water beneath me. Anyway, yes.
Cool. Toast. How do you like it done?
My goodness, I have toast every day.
Yeah.
Medium with butter and jam.
Cool. Now you had me up until the jam. The jam lost you points there, but the medium is fine.
Yeah, I like it medium, just toasty with real butter on it, and I'll put strawberry jam on it. I don't want. I just have. When I came back, and I'm sharing a little note with you. I don't know why I collect jelly. I have this. I see jelly on the food, the food markets on sale. I buy it, and then I think last year I went to the fire department and I brought in 26 jars of jelly that had been unopened. I said, "Here, I'm giving this to you, Merry Christmas." I need to work on that. I think that's my addiction, buying jelly.
Do you
It's
think
kind of
that's
odd.
something that? Yeah, it is odd. Do you think that's something that's come from somebody else when you visited the
No,
other
you know what I
side?
think? And again, I'm just speculating on this. I think I must have, in a previous lifetime made jam because
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. I look at the jars and the colors, and I smell it, I taste it, and I can bad jelly versus good jelly, expensive jelly versus cheap jelly. Yes,
Mm.
it's something I need to work through.
Yeah, it's a good one, that one. What is your favorite sound?
My favorite what?
Sound.
Wow.
I know it's a weird question.
Yeah, because the reason why that has some strong meaning to me is because what I heard on the other side, and I still listen to. It's almost as though imagine Mozart in C minor, the Requiem Mass in C minor, and add Armand Van Buren's soundtrack to it. That wonderful DJ that plays all this trance music. It's just something about you know sound from Mozart and Chopin and added to today's contemporary DJs. I'd like those things mixed.
Mm.
And
That's a
like the
fusion of
Enigma.
music. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, a fusion of music.
Mm. Quality.
Yeah.
Okay, last question in the Koit zone. What is your favorite movie?
Oh gosh.
I know that's going to be hard.
Well, I have to go back to, gosh, well, I'm going to say Oppenheimer. I loved Chris Nolan's interpretation of this because he brought in so much sound and he brought in so much drama, and the actors were amazing, and the subject itself was dark. But I liked his message. I also liked, again, going back to, I can't remember, Justice League. I love that movie. Out of Africa, The Color Purple. To me, they're all one. 300 by Zack Snyder. I just, now TV, Game of Thrones, hands down. I love Game of Thrones. You can't beat it.
Fair play. Well, thank you for participating in the Koit Zone. And we now pull into the last two questions, although I have one more, which relates back to your NDE that I wrote down halfway along. You know that nurse that you said you owe your life to? Did you ever see her again?
You know what's interesting? I spoke to you about a girl who knew me of my amazing artistic abilities. She made a phone call to me last week, and she said, I ran into someone that knows you. And I said, who is that? She said, Patty Sullivan. Do you remember Beverly Sullivan's daughter? And I said, oh my God. Beverly Sullivan was the nurse that found me and brought me to the emergency room. And I will be talking to Patty and Beverly probably sometime this week.
Oh, quality.
So I'm very excited. It was just one of those random phone calls that goes back to serendipitous moments in one's life that takes you back into that moment. And I'm sure when we speak on the telephone, I will break down and cry because she went beyond the call of duty and saved my life.
Literally, yes.
Jack, for a period of time where, you think of the Ebola, you think of all the different COVID, all those things were, medical crew were all doing their heroic work, and there was so much criticism for what they were doing. She went beyond the call of duty and saved my life.
Excellent.
I could have died in that hallway.
Yeah, of course you could. Well, I'm pleased to hear that you're going to speak to her, because that I'm sure that would be a great reunion. Final two questions then. First one, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
Yes. I do martial arts. I ride my bike 25 miles a day. And part of that is I go to a bridge every day, and I do a gratitude list of what happened to me that day. And I write it down, and I go there and I offer it to the universe, to the beings above, and say, thank you very much. I told you before, I believe that the more you thank, the more you receive. And I'm very good at blessing those people like yourself for doing such an amazing job. It really, and I mean this, Dr. Brown knows you, but it really means the world to me that people like you are doing, it's kind of like the unsung hero doing the work that needs to be done. And I'm blessed to have you in my life, even for this brief moment. So you'll be on my list tomorrow. I do that every day. Martial arts, kickboxing, all that. I love it.
Excellent stuff. And the last question will be, what are you currently working on?
Currently working on a documentary called Dying to Come Back, which back and forth. We went all the way to network, then we had the actors and writers struck, and then it went back again, and now we're all over again, starting from ground zero back to pitching. Working on that currently. I have a documentary that's out now called Beyond the Grave, which is current, and I'm working on my next book. I'm 3 chapters short of completing the Accidental Prophet, which goes into my paranormal work and all my paranormal cases and the traveling all throughout the world and the many cases I worked on. And as I said, working on going to grids on the planet, from Stonehenge to Glastonbury to Maui to Sedona, Mount Shasta, and given in detail what happens to us when we go into nature and why.
That is super amazing. And I want to say to all those people listening, there'll be links in the description to this video, A, to Peter's site, and B, to the books. So look, if you've got anything out of today's conversation, which I hope you will, I'm sure you will, go and take a look at those. It's worth investigation. And the final note I will say is, Peter, thanks ever so much for coming on. I think this has been a great conversation. It's been lovely to meet you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, I'm deeply honored, and thank you so much, and thank you to your listening audience. I so appreciate all of you very, very much. It means the world to me. Thank you.
Super ace. And I will say, Peter, if you can just hang on one sec, and for the rest of you, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.